Hey there, students. We are live. All right. We are here for some AP Euro review. If you're here on YouTube, welcome. Now, you can always join us on Crowdcast, but I'm co-streaming on YouTube. We're going to be on YouTube every night until the AP Euro exam at 8 p.m. Eastern. So Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night. And then we're going to be back at 9 a.m. on Monday morning for Breakfast with Richey. You know, we used to do this broadcast. Those of you who are teachers, remember it from some years back. Well, they've got the exam back in the afternoon. So there we go. Okay. Wow. That is something, Alexandria. That is something. So the chat is already lit coming in. Now, tonight's emphasis is the French Revolution and Napoleon. So y'all, oh, wow, we got Mr. Russell's class in Redding, California, coming over here. Hello, Ale and Connor and Darcy. Thanks for joining us on YouTube. Already lit. Yes, ladies and gentlemen. Now, as far as that goes, our focus area is the French Revolution, Napoleon. I'm prioritizing those questions. Now, I'm guessing, though, that y'all probably wouldn't mind hearing the latest warm water records offering that I just posted on the TikToks. So let's see here. Let's see if we've got some new TikTok followers. Natalie with a question mark, Rayhan, Peyton, Raylan, Nija. We've got something there, Vix and Dolove, Rebecca, Soph. Again, at Tom Richey on TikTok, okay, at Tom Richey on TikTok. So y'all just you remember that. I'll be shouting out to new followers. Be sure to show my latest on Henry VIII. Now, y'all might not want to hear it, but you know what? If y'all don't want to hear it, then tough, right? So as far as that goes, let's see here. I need to run in here and make sure that I don't need the A push folder here. So let me just run over here and get the beat here. So let's just run in there and make sure I've got the Henry VIII rap here. And let's see here. Actually, that's not okay. There we go. There we go. I got the instrumental here. If y'all are ready, I got this one. I just got to pull the lyrics up. Okay, so. All right, do y'all want to hear this? Are y'all sure y'all want to hear me rap right at the beginning? You know, y'all probably wanted to wait a little while, but we're going to get this started, okay? Hey, Zeus, evening. Hi, Darcy. Hi, Ediana. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So, again, the first part's Martin Luther and then Henry VIII. Here we go. Christians go to heaven based on faith alone. No indulgences. I got grace at home. Scripture's all I got. Tradition's dead and gone. 95 complaints. I'ma make them known. I got the hammer, nails, door, theses, hammer, nails, door, theses, hammer, nails, door, theses, hammer, nails, door. And, oops, oh my goodness. Did I miss that? Oh my goodness. Okay, here we go. There we go. Henryvii. Around my third wife, Jane. Then she had a boy and died. Church of England, yeah, I'm ruling it supreme. Catherine Howard cheated on me, and I sink that axe deep. Cash in, wives out. I'm a G selling land that belonged to the monasteries. Renounce the Pope. I ain't twerking to his beat. Parliament's got my back. Act of supremacy. Divorce beheaded, died. Divorce beheaded, survived. Marry me, and you might not make it out alive. 6 wives, and I divorcing by the hour. I got wives, cash, church, power. Wives, cash, church, power. Wives, cash, church, power. 6 wives, and I divorcing by the hour. I got wives, cash, church, power. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'll probably do that every broadcast. Now, somebody said they wanted to hear the WAP parody. We can always do that too sometime. All right, you know, that's one of the nice things I like about this whole thing, that, the chat, like the people that get to know each other in the chat is really just always great to see there. And again, that part with Henry VIII is freshly posted on TikTok. So thank you, Sin, Miles Kirby, and Mariano's Magic. Ariana, all right, big supporter over there. Thank you, Ariana, for all the support you've been throwing my way. So with that, also, I've got I don't just rap. I've got my guitar. I've got a song about Napoleon. Have some of y'all heard the Napoleon song? All right. I don't think Ben Shapiro is a figure in AP European history, but let me go ahead and note. Have y'all listened to my Napoleon song on? Okay, and let's just see how many of y'all have heard that. It's only on my SoundCloud, okay, which if y'all haven't seen the SoundCloud, check it out. So as far as that goes, ladies and gentlemen, wondering if y'all have seen that, we'll see. But, I'll sing that tonight if y'all want to hear it. And let's go to the Q&A. We're going to go ahead and figure that out, okay? So Max is asking about contextualizing the French Revolution. Okay, so there are going to be some things that I'm going to share with y'all. Let me go ahead and go into causes of the French Revolution. Okay, so I'm going to share a handout with y'all. All this really is, this one's just kind of an outline, okay? This was an outline that I made some years ago, but I'm going to go ahead and share it, okay? So, all right, Buchanan, Kelly Buchanan is in the house, ladies and gentlemen. All right, thank you, TJP, there in the YouTube chat. Thank you so much. So glad to hear that Kelly Buchanan and his crew are in the house, ladies and gentlemen. So with that, let me go ahead and share this one. This is a link to my website where I'm going over the causes of the French Revolution and kind of getting into contextualization. Okay, so this is something that is accessible to all of you. And so as far as that goes, causes of the French Revolution. Now we've got the French financial crisis. If we're contextualizing the French Revolution, we can talk about the 7 Years' War, okay, which is in U.S. history, we typically call it the French and Indian War. But this is a continental war that happened in the 1750s and 1760s. Early 50, the 50s, 60s, and it's basically a colonial war, okay? And you've got a coalition with Britain and Prussia and Russia, Britain, Prussia, and Russia, and then France. Well, it looks like Russia, kind of did both sides there. Spain, Sweden, that sort of thing. The Holy Roman Empire. But basically, Britain on one side, Britain and allies on the one side, France and allies on the other side. Okay, so what really matters for us here is, that France lost this war. Okay, so you've got this Anglo-Prussian coalition victory, and France spent a lot of money on this war, and it loses all of its North American colonies, just all of them. So France spent a lot of money here, and they lose their North American colonies. This was a devastating defeat for France. And so, spending all that money to get defeated. Now, of course, France does kind of have the last laugh, don't they? When we look at the American Revolutionary War, okay, and when we look at what's going on over here, then we see that you've got the United States, these colonies here versus Britain, and then what have we got there? We got France, and then Spain and the Dutch Republic join later on. This is something. It's actually the Dutch Republic, but as far as that goes, that France is really the only big-time active contributor. But really, France got involved in this war as just a balance of power war. One thing we want to understand about wars in the 18th century, remember, they're through fighting over religion. A lot of this is over the balance of power. So Britain, by the end of the 18th century, Britain is really establishing itself. Around the time of the French Revolution, Britain is establishing itself as the preeminent power in Europe. And so France is getting involved here. They're going to get their revenge. And boy, France gets their revenge. But this is something that there's a saying, we say, cutting off your nose to spite your face. Okay, that it's like, you're willing to cut off your nose to spite your face. And that's what France is doing here. That France is, France is in the, in the business of saying, hey, Britain, we got you back. But it cost France dearly. So when you think about the 7 Years' War and the American Revolutionary War, these are both wars that led to led to the French Revolution in the sense that it helps to create this French financial crisis. Now, also, we'll note that Louis XIV built this massive complex at Versailles. So it cost a good bit of money to maintain the royal household. Now, we also want to note the system of the estates, the system of the estates. Oh, yeah, and let's make sure I'm plugging my book. U.S. Constitution 101 is available. Speaking of the American Revolution, U.S. Constitution 101 is available for what, 15, 16 bucks on Amazon or wherever else you buy books. Okay, so make sure buy my book. Okay, I don't think you can write a book and broadcast without telling people to buy your book. So thank y'all. Word from our sponsor, which I'm my own sponsor. How about that? So Versailles, okay, and there's a perception, especially when the French people are suffering later on, that the royal family is living in inordinate luxury, and it's not like Marie Antoinette, poor woman. I mean, she she didn't create the luxurious court at Versailles or anywhere else. She was just, that's the world that she lived in. But of course, they kind of threw it all on her because she was a foreigner and she had big hair and all that kind of stuff. And, she allegedly said, let them eat cake, even though she didn't. And also, we want to note that with the system of the estates, the church and the nobility were exempt from most forms of taxation, especially the tile, okay, TAILLE. On a DBQ, LEQ, SAQ, it would be great. Like if you knew like that term, it would, that is so specific. So it's something like that. That's the French head tax that neither the church nor the nobility had to pay. Now, this is the thing, that the French financial crisis, this is the whole reason why the Estates General is called, okay? It's the whole reason why the Estates General is called. Now, also, when we're thinking about what's leading to the French Revolution, is also poverty among the lower classes, that there were two consecutive bad harvests. And a lot of times we forget about the peasantry during this time, but, there were two bad harvests in a row that led to grain shortages, which means when there's a shortage of grain, the price goes up, and that leads to a higher cost of living. Now, at the same time, when we think about the working class, the sans-culottes, they're getting lower wages. So we not only have the financial crisis, that the French government is in a financial pickle, but we also have this poverty among the lower classes. Now, also the rise of the bourgeoisie. Now, a lot of people will say the French quote unquote middle class. I like to clarify the professional class, okay? The bourgeoisie, basically educated people who don't work with their hands, okay? So doctors, teachers, attorneys, bureaucrats, people who work in government service, the professional class, educated people who don't work with their hands. Now, to note something, let me go ahead and let's see, the three estates. I haven't made a video about this, but I really should at some point. But let's see how I'm ranking on Google there. I don't know, maybe not. Nope, I'm gonna have to put my name there. Okay. So when y'all look for it, if you're looking for this later, just put Tom Richey, the Three Estates, or something like that. And there we go. So the Three Estates, I'm going to run in here and I'm going to share that on the YouTube chat. All right. And we see here, hi, Ediana, and hi, Albert, Andrea. Okay. Got it. Hey, it's Annie. Great to see y'all on YouTube. Remember to, oh, wow, from Ethiopia. Wow. As far as that goes, ladies and gentlemen, so looking at this here, let me put this in the Crowdcast and get that started as well. So I've got another handout that focuses on the three estates, and something that's really important is not, the three estates, it's not necessarily, you want to think about the first and the second estate are pretty easy. The first estate is the clergy. Just remember God first, right? God first, the church first. France was a religious country at that time. So the first estate is the clergy. Now, remember also, nobody's born into the first estate. You've got the first estate is divided between the Catholic bishops who come from the nobility and the Catholic parish priest who come from the third estate. Now, as far as that goes, Abbe Sieyès was someone who wrote What is the Third Estate? Okay. And what he basically said at the beginning of that essay was he asked, what is the third estate? Everything. What has it been until now in the political order? Nothing. What does it wish to become? Something. Now, why is the third estate everything? The third estate is the estate that does all of the productive work, because the first estate is the clergy. The second estate is people from noble families, and they get these privileges where, the tile, if you can remember that term, those of you who are trying to make a 4 or a 5, that would be a great thing to kind of remember, that they didn't have to pay the tile. They got to chase wild game on someone else's private property. They could carry a sword in public. We think of in the United States as the right to bear arms. This was something that, in the Middle Ages was a right of the nobility. And we also want to note that there are plenty of bourgeoisie that are actually wealthier than people in the nobility. So you don't just have rich nobles, they're actually middling and even some struggling nobles. But there are plenty of bourgeoisie by this time that are engaged in business activity that are making more than nobles are with their farms. So when we're noting here that the first and second estates together, they made up less than 5% of the population of France. Okay, so they had all of these privileges and being exempt from taxes. Now, the third estate, we want to note here that you've really got three groups of people. You've got the bourgeoisie, and as I mentioned, the professional class, okay? These people who do white-collar work, work that typically requires an education. And they made up about 8% of the population, okay? So that's one thing to notice here, that the bourgeoisie, now also they're very dominant in the liberal phase. Now, the liberal phase is that initial phase of the French Revolution from about 1789 to 1791. And what the bourgeoisie had in mind when the Estates General convened and when they created the National Assembly was to abolish aristocratic privilege and set up a constitutional monarchy. Now, remember, a constitutional monarchy is a monarch that is bound by a constitution, that the monarch is not above the law, the monarch is subject to the law. So my book, U.S. Constitution 101, the first chapter of my book says, it's titled, What is a Constitution? And so it goes into, in a constitutional monarchy like Britain, the Constitution is, the monarch is part of the Constitution and is subject to the laws and has to answer to a representative body. So the Glorious Revolution of 1688, which is on your exam. And, in this thing here, I go into, let's see, the tier, limiting the government. I've got, So in 1689, this is on page 13 of my book, by the way. In 1689, William III and Mary II signed the English Bill of Rights, which cemented Parliament's status as a standing lawmaking body and enumerated several rights of the people, including the right to petition and protection from excessive fines and bails. Okay, so here and there I've got some references to European history. So with that, they wanted to set up a constitutional monarchy. The bourgeoisie weren't looking for a radical revolution. Now, the sans-culottes, this is the urban working class that at that time made up about a quarter of the French population. So, so we see here a larger group than the bourgeoisie, about 3 times as many of them. Now, the sans-culottes. They're led by, now sans-culottes means without breeches. Breeches are, those pants like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson wrote, not wrote, but wore, where you had stockings, and these pants would go back down, they'd go down about your knee. Well, these sans-culottes, they worked with their hands. So they wore long pants. So the culottes or culotte or whatever, it's French, right? It's a written test. As far as that goes, that they wore long pants. They wore things that you would work in. So we've got on TikTok, new TikTok followers, Amaya, JJ dot underscore dot Teixeira, Cole Sullivan. We got some kind of website there, Anna, and another, like, I don't understand what that means. So again, ladies and gentlemen, we are, just taking a look, taking a look there. And remember, got that new Henry VIII rap on TikTok. So that's something y'all want to, y'all want to look at that and take that into account. And so with that, the radicalization of the French Revolution. So this is something that, this is a group. Now, the peasantry, they don't get nearly enough. Like, it's something about people who live in rural areas. They kind of get ignored. Like, they made up at this time 2/3 of the French population. So if you want to understand Napoleon, like, why did Napoleon bring back the Catholic Church? Well, here's the thing. The peasantry, they had no problem with the Catholic Church, except that the Catholic Church was collecting tithes and that sort of thing. The peasantry had no problem with the church as an institution. They just didn't like that the church had the power to collect its own taxes and stuff like that. So the peasantry was a very conservative group that tended to support the church and the monarchy, but they would object to financial obligations that they saw as excessive. So when you look at this thing where the nobles don't have to pay the title, but the peasants do, they resent this. But again, they're not necessarily thinking that they want to get rid of the monarchy and that sort of thing. So when we're looking at the contextualization of the French Revolution, the bourgeoisie is, this professional class is becoming more and more prominent in the society as things continue to modernize, okay? And we're moving away from it's still a predominantly agricultural society, just not quite as much as it was. So with this, they wanted to have their own house. You think about the Estates General, where you had the 3 estates. Well, the bourgeoisie, they wanted something more like the British Parliament, where you have the House of Lords, which is the nobility and the church, and then you have the House of Commons, people who aren't members of the church and people who don't have a noble title. They wanted something more like that. They looked across the channel to Britain and they said that, that's the kind of thing that we want. And so with that, we see here that the 3 estates, and then also we want to note the influence of Enlightenment philosophy, okay? We do want to understand that, Locke, Voltaire, Montesquieu, and Rousseau, they all made their own contributions, okay? Locke, this idea of natural rights, of life, liberty, and property, that the idea, Locke wrote that divine right monarchy is not legitimate, which the thing is, when you look at the French state, before the French Revolution, the King of France, the king was the glue that held the whole thing together, and the king claimed to rule by divine right. Well, a lot of folks who are getting into Enlightenment philosophy, they're not liking this stuff so much. Now, if you're looking at this, you can click here and you can actually go, okay, it doesn't look like it's going to open up a new tab or whatever, but you can go to, we see here that, oh, there's Tony Robbins, I guess, going to give y'all a little pep talk before the exam. So, you can see my playlist, where we talk about the foundations of the Enlightenment, that sort of thing. So, you can take a look at that if you want to, my lectures on the Enlightenment. So when we're looking at that, we want to understand that Locke said that the purpose of government is to protect people's natural rights, and that government is only legitimate to the extent that it has consent. As we mentioned last night, Voltaire was a champion of religious toleration, and he held great contempt for the Catholic Church. And then Montesquieu, this idea that you shouldn't consolidate government power in one place. You should separate the powers into the legislative, executive, judicial, give them checks and balances. So Montesquieu, inspires people who want something other than an absolute government. And then Rousseau, now, of course, Rousseau, again, we mentioned last night that Rousseau is an outlier when it comes to Enlightenment philosophy. Rousseau said that the government's legitimacy doesn't necessarily come from the consent of the governed, but it comes from that the government is representing the general will of the people. So Rousseau is more influential in the French Revolution's radical phase, whereas in the liberal phase, in that first phase, you've got Locke, Voltaire, and Montesquieu, who all have their influence. Thank you, Sosie, Camilla, Finn, and Aubrey, and Monty for the TikTok follows. If y'all are here, I don't know if they're just looking at my stuff there. I tell you what, y'all really did a great job promoting that last rap. I think it's gotten over 40,000 people have looked at that. And then now the Henry the Eighth is making its play out there. So I appreciate that. None of this would be doing anything if it weren't for y'all. So we also want to note that the ineptitude of Louis XVI. Louis XVI was not really the man of the hour. There are some people like Peter the Great. They're the person for their time and place. That wasn't really Louis XVI. Now, also, ladies and gentlemen, I want to make sure that we are recognizing new Instagram follows. I was thinking about my instrument there that I got to play the Napoleon song later. But as far as that goes, we want to recognize new Instagram followers. And so as far as that goes, we've got Mr. PXRK. All right, we got an educator coach. He must be here. Mr. Park. All right, we're going to follow Mr. Park back. Professional courtesy, a fellow member of the bourgeoisie, right? We're teachers. We've got Samuel and Kay Bennett and Sam. We got two Samuels and G Lee or something and YVZII. All right, kind of like Henry VIII. All right. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that's contextualizing the French Revolution. Okay, when we're thinking about contextualization, what were things like before the French Revolution? Okay, so with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to put that question to rest there. We're going to take a little look at the chat, and oh my goodness, yeah, that y'all. Oh my goodness. Okay. Alexandria, not a big fan of Hitler, which most of us aren't, right? So with that, oh my goodness. All right. So Robespierre, propaganda, FR. Okay, I need to do something where I just read that. Once this exam's over, I just need to go through these chats and just read them in whatever voice. Somebody else dislikes Hitler. That's good. That's good. I'm glad people dislike Hitler over there. Otherwise, I'd be a little bit concerned. So, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of y'all have not heard the Napoleon song. I'll have to remember that. So I'm going to make sure that we take requests. Hey, let's see. We got Ian over there. Let's make sure that if y'all got some stuff that y'all want me to do here. You know what? I think we might. We'll probably talk about Napoleon. We got Goob over there on YouTube, one of Mr. Buchanan's students. Robespierre is someone's dog's name. That is an interesting one, isn't it? So with that, let's go ahead and get this going back here. So yeah, so the provisions. Okay, so the Napoleonic Code. You know what? Great little segue here. Let's talk about Napoleon. Okay, because Napoleon is, I will tell you, I'm a pretty big Napoleon fan. I think that if Napoleon had not invaded Russia, we would remember him as one of the greatest, political leaders of all time. That's what I think. But I think that his military defeats, kind of overshadowed his his greatness as a civil ruler. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll talk about the Napoleonic Code and some other things here. So let me go ahead and let's see, did Napoleon betray the French Revolution? Okay, so we're going to have a little look here. Did Napoleon betray the French Revolution? I'm going to share another handout with y'all that I made here. I have not put the, I tell you what, I made this in 2021. This is one of those things. A lot of y'all are going to be taking a push next year. Let me figure that out. I'm going to run into the Crowdcast chat and, are you planning to take a push next year? All right. So as far as that goes, yes or no. Now it's not necessarily for certain, but are you planning to take a push next year? I know some of y'all are going to be graduating, so that's going to be fine. But basically, I do a push as well. And life has asked a lot of me lately the past few years, and there's just a lot of stuff that hasn't gotten on YouTube. And I should be in a position very soon where I'm going to be able to remedy that. So those of you that are going to be taking a push, y'all should be looking forward to some new content. That's going to be, just new to everyone when y'all are taking it, okay? And so as far as that goes, I shared it over there. If I shared it on the Crowdcast, this handout here, did Napoleon betray the French Revolution? Okay, so as far as that goes, that a lot of y'all are planning. It looks like about the amount that I'd expect. Usually, it's about 70% of the people who take AP Euro are sophomores who have a push coming next year, and then the remainder are usually seniors. So, did Napoleon betray the French Revolution? Okay, and this is a controversial chapter in the history of the French Revolution. Like we think about, for example, like Napoleon didn't initially take power in a democratic kind of way, right? Napoleon in 1799 took power in a military coup, a coup d'etat. And so historians have argued for years, okay, for centuries, really. I mean, the number of books written by about Napoleon is astounding, okay? But did Napoleon's coup d'etat represent the end of the French Revolution or the beginning of a new chapter of the French Revolution? Okay, so does it represent the end of the French Revolution or a new chapter? And that's something that is going to be, important to consider. And historians have weighed in on both sides. Now, personally, I think that Napoleon, was more the fulfillment of the French Revolution than not. But one of the things that we have to think of when we think about Napoleon is, at first glance, you think, did they exchange a king for a dictator? Napoleon, it looks a lot like a king. So it doesn't make sense to a lot of people, right? But with that, Napoleon forces us to think about, what did the French Revolution mean, okay? And that's something that I think is one of the most important questions, not just what happened in the French Revolution, but what does it mean that France had a revolution, you see? And when we think about that, a lot of times, because Napoleon did not create a viable representative assembly during his rule, that, okay, well, he betrayed the French Revolution. But we also have to remember that the French Revolution had a lot of different values, not just representative government, but popular government that, whether people voted for it or not, that they support. Equality under the law and equality of opportunity. Now, one thing that I'll tell you that I always think your two biggest stars of the French Revolution, and they're utility players, because you can also use them for the 19th century. If you understand liberalism and nationalism. Now, on Saturday night at 8 Eastern, we're going to be talking about the isms, okay? We're going to be going into the isms, and as far as that goes, we got Kendra's here, and looks like, Kendra's in the chat, and we've got Adam Harrison liking some things here. We've got Amayarua, I think. Thank y'all for the love on Instagram. We got a lot of great people on here. It's M.E.H. okay? Luke's Bloom. All right, Instagram. I'll be going to Instagram, TikTok here and there. But liberalism and nationalism, these are your big utility players because they both contributed to the French Revolution and they both play a big role in the 19th and 20th centuries. Like when we think about dividing things at 1815, that we see a world that looks a lot more like the world that we live in today. And then social mobility, this idea that somebody should be able to not have their life determined for them by the social group that they were born into. So when we think about this, that yeah, as far as representative government, Napoleon gets a big fat F, okay, a big fat F. So that's something that we could definitely note there, big fat F. But with that, that's only one thing that Napoleon, he did what are called plebiscites. Like Napoleon didn't allow someone to like run against him, but what he did, which we got to judge him by the standards of his time. He basically wrote a constitution in 1804 that made him the emperor with pretty much absolute power, but he gave it to the people of France for a vote. Okay, he gave it to the people of France to vote on, yes or no. But he still said that a constitution, even if it's an autocratic constitution for an emperor, it still needs the people to vote. Okay, it still needs the people to vote. And so this is something when we think about social contract theory and Rousseau. Locke and Rousseau are both social contract theorists. Now they have different ideas of the social contract, and I've got a video where I go into that quite a bit. But the idea that Napoleon, he believed that the people were sovereign. Now, whereas Louis XIV, before the French Revolution, called himself King of France, Napoleon called himself not Emperor of France, but Emperor of the French, Emperor of the French people. Napoleon was a people's emperor. And when you think about what about the Concordat of 1801, where Napoleon, now we want to note how this works, that when you look at before the French Revolution, the Catholic Church was part of the state, right? They could collect their tithes. There was no religious toleration. Napoleon makes a deal with the Pope and the Catholic Church. And what he says is, okay, the Catholic Church will come back, but not as the state religion, but the majority religion, okay? And this is very important because what Napoleon says here is that, this is something that the people wanted, especially rural people who were big fans of Napoleon, that they wanted to be Catholic, but they didn't want the Catholic Church to collect tithes. And so Napoleon says the Catholic Church, I was not Catholic, but Catholic Church is the majority religion of France. And, but then if you want to be another religion, great. So as we said last night, if someone wants to cast Napoleon as an enlightened absolutist, that is something that is defensible. So we've got Bloom LS24, Azzy, Addy 659, Kenny, Clayton Lord, Sophia, XX_Gomez_gaming_XX. So Leal, Sophia, and Jake, thank y'all for the recent follows on TikTok. Okay, so we got then Anna and Ali Schultz. I don't know if all those people are here. Thank y'all again for supporting my content there. I'm kind of trying to, get my feet wet on the TikToks, I suppose. But the thing is that this is Napoleon's doing what the people want. And also, we can think of the Concordat as Napoleon when we think about a national religion. And so when we're thinking about the Napoleonic Code, the big thing about the Napoleonic Code is it gives France a single set of laws across the country that apply to everybody. And this is that principle of equality under the law. This idea that men are born and remain free and equal in rights. That's from the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen. And so no more like first estate, second estate, third estate, and that kind of thing, right? And so with that, we see that Napoleon creates these lycees, equality of opportunity. You can basically test in these lycees, which are basically government sponsored prep schools for people who want to enter government service. And, these schools or other, kind of bourgeois kind of things, if you could afford it, you paid your own tuition. But if you couldn't afford it and you could pass the entrance exam, you got a scholarship. So Napoleon is making changes in France that are, for the most part, really good. Now, maybe a mixed report card on liberalism, because Napoleon did employ some censorship. Now, the censorship was somewhat limited. People couldn't criticize him. People couldn't publish things that promoted atheism. They didn't have to promote Catholicism or any. I mean, Napoleon himself was not someone who was, deeply Catholic or anything like that. But Napoleon, you couldn't criticize him. You couldn't promote atheism. You couldn't promote the idea that there is no God. So there are some things that are censored, but if we judge him too hard, again, in the context of his times, was there really freedom of the press during the radical phase of the French Revolution? It's like the entire French Revolution has a checkered, kind of thing when we think about liberalism. So, and again, Napoleon with the Concordat, religious toleration. Now, as we said, you can make the argument that Napoleon was an enlightened absolutist. But one thing that people forget about the French Revolution a lot of times is, again, not just liberalism, not just representative government, but also nationalism. And Napoleon excels here, okay? So when we think about the Napoleonic Code, it was a national law code. It was not regional. It didn't treat different people as nations within a nation. It was a national law code that applied all across the country to everyone in France. Now, Napoleon used the French tricolor flag, the revolutionary flag. He said that is the flag of France. That is our national flag. The Catholic Church coming back, that Catholicism is France's national religion. And that's something that, even though today France is a national state, y'all might remember how President Macron, back in, I guess it was early January, when the cathedral at Notre Dame was reopened after it had been damaged in the fire. And so Emmanuel Macron had this, he brought President Trump, who was then President-elect Trump, as his personal guest. He invited all these world leaders. That Notre Dame, even though, France is, only partly Catholic today, and a lot, France has a very high percentage of atheists and a substantial percentage of Muslims today, that when we look at something like this, that, Napoleon saw Catholicism as France's national religion. So, Emmanuel Macron, it was a really big deal when Notre Dame reopened. It's a national symbol. At the Pope's funeral, Emmanuel Macron was there at the Pope's funeral. So, even though there are plenty of people in France today that are not Catholic, Catholicism, to French nationalists, they see Catholicism as their national religion. And that's one thing that you see with, like, the, when you look at nationalist politics today with the National Rally, formerly the National Front, that this idea that Catholicism is a part of French nationality. And so when Napoleon was encouraging his troops, he said, the national colors shall fly from steeple to steeple, all the way to the towers of Notre Dame, okay? Talking about this as a national symbol. Now, the lycees that Napoleon is creating, French, is the only language of instruction. Now, this was a time where there were a lot of regional languages that people spoke. And those languages are all endangered now because Napoleon promoted the French language. We need a national language. Justice is blind, but she speaks French. If you were going to go to court, you had to plead your case in French, or your attorney did. That French was the only language that would be spoken in court. And let's not forget that Napoleon, his time in France is the peak okay, of France's national greatness. And you can see this, it's just, you look at the Arc de Triomphe, for example, that this was built after the Napoleonic Wars, has become sort of an all-encompassing French war memorial, but it's the sort of thing that, like, Napoleonic France was the apex. And when you go to Napoleon's tomb, no caption is necessary here. I mean, he's got like 12 angels there, and just, I mean, it is really something, okay? But as far as that goes, that Napoleon, in a lot of ways, if we look at the French Revolution as being a nationalistic revolution, okay, this is something that is extremely important here, okay? So Napoleon, nationalism. Yeah, so if we're trying to make an argument that Napoleon is actually completing the French Revolution, that's what we've got there. So again, I'm a big fan of Napoleon, but again, like other enlightened absolutists, he got swallowed up in militaristic adventures that ended up kind of messing things up. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, let me go ahead and if you, and, unless y'all don't want to hear it, I wrote a song about Napoleon. It was actually at the very beginning of the pandemic in 2020, where you remember they told us like we needed to stay home for 2 weeks to slow the spread or something like that. And so I was home and I was like, you know what? Let me write a song. And I decided that I was going to write a song about Napoleon. And maybe the only proper song that I ever wrote. I'm not a rapper, but every once in a while, I guess I do rap. But I sat down and I wrote a song. And so as far as that goes, now if y'all don't want to hear it, I'm not going to like make y'all. Okay, so y'all are okay with that. Y'all are okay. So it's Sing It Queen. All right. So Napoleon song. Albert wants to hear it in the YouTubes. All right. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to play the Napoleon song. It is available on my SoundCloud. Okay, it is on my SoundCloud. That's the only place I've got it. Maybe I should put it on YouTube. But let's see here. Oh. I should probably tune before these things. Y'all get a glass of water, stay hydrated. All right, there we go. Okay, there we go. There we go. All right. There we go. Yep. The year was 1812, and the French emperor said that Russia couldn't trade with the British anymore. With a military genius leading 500,000 men, the Grand Army can't do anything but win. Now let's see, anything but win. Napoleon, the French Revolution. Let's see, Napoleon, the French Revolution brought you. Oh yeah. The French Revolution brought you to your throne. I tell you, this is kind of a dry run. On Sunday and Monday, I'll kind of have it down. So y'all are kind of here for the dry run, y'all. So Napoleon, the French Revolution brought you to your throne. The continental system trade with Britain must cease. It's the only way that Europe will ever know peace. Let me make this writing a little smaller so I don't have to skip around so much. All right, now he's going to invade Russia. Now remember, the continental system, ladies and gentlemen, that was Napoleon's plan to economically isolate Britain because he couldn't invade Britain, so he wanted to economically isolate them. So that was the continental system. Trade with Britain must cease. You see? Coming back with Russia, not coming back from Russia, not as many as before. The Grand Army ain't so grand anymore. Watch Moscow burn with the fires of hell. In our retreat, it didn't go so well. Napoleon, Frank wanted Borodino, but he couldn't win the war. Time to raise a new army with esprit de corps, because the Sixth Coalition's coming back for more. Lost the battle of the nations against Europe's armies, while the bead painted Leonidas at Thermopylae. I wanted to keep fighting. There we go. I wanted to keep fighting, but then after a debate, the generals all decided it was time to abdicate. Napoleon. They exiled him to Elba, but he was escaped. For 100 days, he was back on the throne. But Wellington defeated him, and now he's gone. Now he's gone. He was gone. Oh, whoops, we got to. Oh, what's going on there? Oh, I think I might have gone the wrong way. There we go. Gosh, that thing is not. There we go. Looking at the stars and they're shining so bright. The stars above St. Helena so pretty at night. But in the South Atlantic, something doesn't feel right. Not a war, not a battle, not a triumph in sight. Middle of nowhere, not exactly paradise. And the English governor doesn't treat me very nice. Stomach ulcer, loneliness, I'm in such a tribe. Got 6 more years till the end of my life. And that's where those of you in the chat press F to pay respects. And y'all are going to remember being here in a few more nights, like on Sunday night, Monday morning, where, I got my bearings again. Because I take out my guitar and play the song a couple times a year. All right. Y'all press an F in the chat to pay respects. Let's make sure about that. Let's see. Are we paying respect? All right. We are paying respects, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully on YouTube as well. All right. So, yeah, there we go. So, again, y'all are just, y'all are getting a little bit, but let me, we're past the sad part, and now we're going to memorialize, and we're going to end on a high note. In 1840, they brought you home to an unmarked tomb beneath a classical dome. Now you're guarded by a dozen angels made of stone, and of the 17th of June, you were not alone. Napoleon, the French Revolution brought you to your throne. Those rumors about your height, they were overblown. Make your mark on history, and you'll never be gone. Ladies and gentlemen, I tell you what, thanks for witnessing me taking that off the shelf and kind of dusting it off. So we'll we'll hear from that again later on, like Sunday, Monday night. But again, these early streams, y'all are like my real people, just kind of, we're just kind of hanging out and getting ready for some AP Euro. So as far as that, now a more polished version is there, from when I recorded it in 2020. It's on my SoundCloud. My SoundCloud's got a whole bunch of stuff that we might have to like dust a few other things off. I've got, y'all heard the what do you call it, the WAP parody, but I've got this other parody called Warm It Up Pete. I'll probably do that at least once, probably Sunday or Monday. I like that one. So it's like Peter the Great rapping about needing to get a warm water port and all of that kind of stuff. So ladies and gentlemen, let's go back, let's go back to another question here. And, we'll be recognizing people who are following on the TikToks and all of that kind of stuff. We got Addison and Belsa and Darcy and Liv. Thank y'all so much for the recent follows. We want to show y'all are appreciated. Excuse me. So the different governments during the French Revolution. So as far as that goes, you start off with the Estates General, right? That's during the liberal phase, or kind of at the beginning, right? And the States General, now I've got a lot of this. I've got everything through the end of the Reign of Terror lectured out on YouTube very, very thoroughly, probably exhaustive, okay? So as far as that goes, the French Revolution, the first governing body is the National Assembly, right? And the National Assembly is this idea where we don't have estates. We are, we're making a constitution for the nation. Now, this started as an extra legal body that Louis XVI did not directly authorize the National Assembly. And, but at the same time, Louis ended up consenting to it when he saw which way the winds were blowing. Now, Louis XIV probably would have just gone in there and arrested those people. That's the thing that, Louis XVI was kind of indecisive, and that indecision worked against him in a lot of situations. So the National Assembly is kind of governing through this liberal phase. Now, the National Convention is the body that's governing during the radical phase of the French Revolution. Now, one of my as far as that goes, let me go ahead. One of my lectures that is in the French, and I'd encourage y'all to look at that French Revolution series. I did some of this more than 10 years ago. It's like, where did all that time go? Y'all were toddlers or something like that. But as far as that goes, the radicalization of the French Revolution, your four phases are the liberal phase, the radical phase, the directory phase, and the Napoleonic phase. And so we see basically going from being influenced by John Locke to being influenced more by Rousseau. And so again, the liberal phase, that's where we see the National Assembly, later on the Legislative Assembly. I don't think you have to necessarily know like all of those. We don't need to go overboard with some of these things. But as far as that goes, that's the liberal phase where they wanted constitutional monarchy, liberal reform. They wanted to abolish legal privileges and the like. So that's something that, is important to note there. Now, the radical phase from about 1792 to 1794, you've got the Jacobins and the sans-culottes, okay? And basically, these are people who, the Jacobins and the sans-culottes, they are Republicans. Now, not Republicans like the Republican Party, Republicans in the sense that they were against the monarchy. They wanted to get away from the monarchy. And again, Rousseau kind of takes the lead philosophically, where the government is legitimate only if it represents the general will. Now, again, though, you've got, Robespierre and other folks that are, claiming to represent the general will. And who knows if they do or not, right? So, of course, that's the point where Louis ends up becoming a constitutional monarch, tries to go away, that sort of thing. And, but again, all of that stuff is in there. Okay, so I go way in depth there. And then the directory. Now, one thing we want to note there is the directory. Really, all we need to know about the directory is basically that it happened. There was that period between the Reign of Terror and Napoleon. I've never seen there was years ago a DBQ about the French Revolution, but it didn't really require. I mean, some of the documents were during the directory, but you weren't really required to know a lot about it. So the directory was, kind of a bourgeois sort of body. It never really had the kind of power that the guy, it had its flaws. Again, I can't really tell you a whole lot about the directory. It was a government that was led by like five people, a council of five people, and there was a legislative body. They put away the guillotines for the most part. The Catholic Church was still technically illegal, but a lot of the Catholic churches, kind of like, the bars during Prohibition in the United States, where it's like, okay, we don't call it a bar, we call it a soda shop, but it's really a bar or something. So it's a sort of thing where, if Catholics go into the churches and worship, they weren't being punished for it and that sort of thing. Napoleon just basically came in and made Catholicism fully legal again. But during that period of the directory, nobody was being arrested or brought to the guillotine for practicing Catholicism and that kind of thing. So with that, we've got Is and a pair of Keat. And then we've got Ava and Ryan, hello, and Deathly Bath Toys. Wow, how about that? Thanks for the Instagram follows. So with that, we're going to take a look here how Prussia all of a sudden became a powerful country. Okay, now how the effect of the Reign of Terror on different social classes. Okay, one thing that I'll just Izzy, I'll give you a kind of a quick answer to this because I don't think you have to dig too deep here. But one thing that we'll note is that the Reign of Terror, being anti-monarchical, anti-church, the peasantry never really supported this government. This government was supported by radical bourgeoisie and sans-culottes in Paris, but it was never really supported in the countryside. One of my favorite parts of the French Revolution that is actually when I put that lecture series down, I was meaning to start off with that. So, it's the war in the Vendée. Okay, this is a great story. It's probably not going to be on the exam really, but the Vendée, these were peasants who led a revolt, and basically they went to their nobles. A lot of times when we're studying history, we look at it from this like liberal perspective, and it's like the nobles kind of emerge as like the not exactly the bad guys, but not the good guys either. And so the peasants in the Vendée, a region of France, went to the nobles, and they said, hey, we need you to lead us. You're the nobles, and it's your job to lead us in this revolt. Like, we want to revolt against this government. And they did. So, the peasantry, it's important to note there that the peasantry never really, supported these ideas of de-Christianization and of getting rid of the monarchy. And that's part of the reason why Napoleon, was so popular with the peasantry, that France had a leader again, and France had a government that recognized the right that people had to worship in the Catholic Church. And so with that, Isabel, great thing here. Now, these are those things. I mean, I could just say blah, 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 something like that. Okay, your question's been answered. I will talk to y'all tomorrow night about some opportunities. I'm thinking that I'm going to schedule an LEQ workshop on Saturday afternoon and a multiple choice strategy session on Saturday night. I'll let y'all know by the time I broadcast tomorrow. I'll be able to let y'all know. Those are going to have $10 tickets, but I've never been asked for a refund. Like maybe there was like one person one year that asked, like, and I don't think he even asked for a refund. There was one person one time who said they were dissatisfied, and I just gave him a refund. But like, I mean, I don't have people coming to me for refunds for these things because it's a smaller group. The chat's not lit like the public kind of things. So if you're really interested in that kind of thing, then I will be offering. I'll talk about that more tomorrow. But what I'm leaning toward right now is to do an LEQ session on Saturday afternoon, and then a multiple choice strategy session on Saturday night. That is the current plan. So y'all just stay tuned for that. I'll let y'all know tomorrow. But again, I just think if you're going to get into that, best thing to do is to get it in depth when you have a group of serious people who really want to dig in, because it's not just something that you just like, oh, okay, we'll just do this and you're good, right? So with that, now one thing I can tell you, I do have an old sheet where I've got some multiple choice tips. It's called the Richey Doctrine. And so I go into some things like, when you're eliminating, okay, if you want like the quick answer, make sure that don't just try to find the new answer, like go and eliminate. Okay. So as far as that goes, usually there can be two answers. I'm going to share a link to a document I made several years ago. So with that, all right. You might want to reconsider what the reason is. Okay. So known for being the most, yeah. And Dylan, I think that, there is something, fault like, so as far as that goes, I think that I think Louis the 16th, if I'm not mistaken, Dylan in the YouTube chat, also did, before the French Revolution, recognize some form of religious toleration. So yeah, history is written by the winner. So I think that you do have a point that, like, I mean, a lot of people were upset, especially in the, a lot of people were upset in the, when Louis was beheaded, because he wasn't somebody, Louis the 16th wasn't somebody who was, he wasn't hated by, a lot of French people. So with that, oh my goodness, we got industry and ism. So I tell you what, do y'all want to hear like maybe one more rap before we wrap this up? Haha, see what I did there? Let me see if I can find, where is Warm It Up, Pete? I feel like I should, oh gosh, let me see if I can get Warm It Up, Pete. Let's see. Y'all want to hear Warm It Up, Pete? Should I do one more rap before we get out of here? Let me see. It's been years since I've done this one, okay? But let's see. Warm it up, Pete. All right, I need to run over there and figure that out. Let's see. Okay, and I need to have an instrumental. Okay, so let's see. I hadn't done this in a long time. Okay, so with that, we're gonna go ahead and get this going. Let's see. This is based on like a song that was kind of popular in the early '90s. Warm it up, Pete. I'm about to. Warm it up, Pete. That's what I like wars to do. Warm it up, Pete. I'm about to. Warm it up, Pete. I'm westernizing Russia too. When I was found sorry, I had a port on the white sea. Frozen after years, the kind of port don't excite me. So feel the flow of the star who built his own town. Warm water's what I want. I want it year round. I like to grab a hold of my arm and tell him, let's go. And when I give an order, don't say no. Now that's the kind of mind I'm in. Russia's got a westernized to win. Azov campaign, go to war when I want something. My name to the battlefront, keep the can stuff. The big thing, got to get them warm. Water port on the Black Sea, Ottoman Scots warm. Although a court's full of Venus fine wannabes, westernized in the great nation we will be. So all the boyars thankful like roads, dress like a French noble, or hit the road. Warm it up, Pete. I'm about to. Warm it up, Pete. That's one bite towards two. Warm it up, Pete. I'm about to. Warm it up, Pete. The tweet's about to groan. Oh, that's okay. We gotta let it go. It's about to groan. Great Northern War, it's on. coming in like a cyclone. Charles XII, the Battle of Narva, totally beat me like it came from Sparta. But when you see me at full top and winning, and then I put my hand in to build my own city, call it St. Pete because I'm feeling blessed, fam. Got a window and it's looking out west, man. You got all, oh, better stop wearing it. Because, oh, wait, I got to go back a little bit, okay? All right, just let me go back just a little bit. Window and it's looking out west, man. If you got a long rope, you better stop wearing it. Because when I get a beard in my hand, I start tearing it. They call me Peter the G-R-E-T. There ain't no ruler absolute as me. When I went on a grand tour in Europe, that's when the Stretzy rebelled. I made the blood run like syrup. Execute them all, tortured some just for fun, just like I tortured my own son. So many times I heard the church say you can't touch me, so I bring reform. They say, okay, yeah, I gotta. I'm not. I don't have my version there, but I will work on that. I tell you what. But let's see. How did y'all like that one? How did y'all like that one? Let's see. Let's see how that. So with that, let's see how we did there. Oh, okay, we're already talking about somebody's mom being the goat keeper or something like that. Goalkeeper. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, how'd y'all like that one? Should I play? Should I do that one when we, practice that a little bit? Do it Sunday or Monday. Drop it on spot. So that one is on my SoundCloud. So, kind of an early '90s rap style there, but yeah, so we're going to be doing a little more of that. We're going to have okay, got it. Oh my goodness. I tell you, it has been a fun time. But yeah, it's all on SoundCloud. Like all of these songs are on my SoundCloud or, somewhere else. But yeah, I'll work on that a little bit. And again, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow we're going to circle back and go to the very beginning. Okay, so we're going to be doing the Renaissance. Yeah, I can do some shout outs, CJ. I'm fine with that. As far as that, I'm going to be, here tomorrow night at 8, Renaissance. Saturday night at 8, the industry and isms, and then Sunday at 8 for just open season. And remember, Monday morning at 9, that's going to be, that's when it's really going to be, really want to get going. Okay. So as far as that goes, Mr. Gray, okay. Friend's name we call Silly Billy. Shout out, Silly Billy. Hey there, Silly Billy. All right, there we go. Bro, all the homies love Macklin. All right, so if all the homies love Macklin, then so do I. Let's see. So we've got Pedri, we've got Mr. Aldridge. Thank y'all, thank y'all's teacher on my behalf because, it's so good when teachers are recommending these things. Miss Daw, Miss English, okay. Somebody's scared, but it's not Miss English because she's not going to have to take the exam. Y'all are FR, Jesus, FR. Shout out to Jesus. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So as far as that goes, Mr. Yurchak again, the GOAT, FR. Cortez, you know what? We got to do something. We got to figure out what we're going to write. Like, you want to have like a joke that you write on like the DBQ and or the LEQ. I feel like we need something like, so we got to do that FR or something like that. We'll figure it out. Of course, I was thinking maybe from these little raps here, like, the hammer, nails, door, theses. But we need to kind of talk about what are y'all wanting to write like is just kind of a hype thing, at the top or bottom of your DBQ. The readers actually get kind of amused by that. Miss Daw, okay, bro, shout out Macklin. Is he the one all the homies love? Mr. Patel and Miss Piercy, Miss Greenlee, Mr. Frazier. All right. You know what, Izzy? That is the sign of a great teacher. That is the sign of a great teacher right there. A truly great teacher. Mr. Nuxall and Mr. Bloom, Mr. DeStefano, and Mr. Barabi. B Rabby. Okay, Mr. LeJames. Is that like Mr. LeBron James? Is he like teaching now? Mr. LeJames, so true GOAT right there, I guess, huh? We got that. And GC for sport. Yeah, I tell you what, the group chats are always so lit. And you know, it's always great. I really enjoy the fact that like these live events bring people together who otherwise wouldn't know each other, and all of a sudden they start you know, they start studying together from like all of these different places. Mr. Monk, Miss Mitchell, Mrs. Calabrese. We've got three cheers for Gettysburg. All right, three cheers for Gettysburg, three cheers for Sweet Revenge. What was that? A let's see, was that like My Chemical Romance? What was that? It's Three Cheers. Yeah, that was My Chemical Romance, wasn't it? Oh my goodness. You know what? There's another thing that I did as well. Let's see. Let me see. What was it? Let me just let me see. Let me just because it was brought up, you know. This was probably around like 2020, 2021 era, but just you know, when we were getting there, let's see the core. Let's see the last chorus. Okay, and where is the? Okay, so post chord. Let's see bridge ending. Let's see. This one's not the tab I was looking for. I don't. Oh wait, there we go. There we go. Okay, 7 and 9. Yep. There we go. There we go. All right. You know, we should get that. We should get that going again. Um, let's see. So that was. Oh, come on. They cut it off like right in front of me. There we go. What's the worst that I could say? Things are better if I stay. So long and good night. So long and good night. Things are better if I stay. So long and good night. So long and good night. All right, ladies and gentlemen. But that was my outro for a little while. Should I be bringing that back? Should I be bringing that back? So as far as that goes, you know, we should bring it back. You know what? We'll do it. You know, we'll do it. So you know, what was the carry on this way, right? So yeah, y'all want should I do it one more time, or y'all already heard enough? Y'all heard enough. Y'all heard enough, right? So as far as that go, oh my goodness, Mr. Freed. Okay, we got Mr. Freed out there, and again, we're just kind of wrapping it up. The real folks here. We'll do the outro one more time. Let me make sure I got it. There we go. All right, there we go. All right. What's the worst that I could say? Things are better if I stay. So long and good night. So long and good night. Well, if you carry on this way, things are better if I stay. So long and good night. So long and good night. All right, ladies and gentlemen, leaving for real this time. FR, FR. It is always a pleasure, ladies and gentlemen.